Imagine this: you lie down at night, the soft hum of silence wrapping around you like a velvet curtain. The world dims. Your thoughts, once loud and restless, begin to dissolve. Your breath slows, your body surrenders, and think you're gone. Not dead, not unconscious in the medical sense, but gone in a way that's more enigmatic, more terrifying. Where did you go? One moment, you are immersed in your identity, your memories, your fears, your dreams for the future. The next, you're a black hole of awareness. Time slips, sensation vanishes, and consciousness dissolves into an invisible sea. Minutes pass, hours, maybe eternity. Then, without warning, you're back, awake, blinking at the ceiling as if nothing happened. But something did happen, or rather something was missing. If your consciousness is the very core of who you are, how can it disappear so easily, so regularly, and return as if untouched? Where does it go during those long hours of the night? Do you vanish into nothingness, or travel into realms your waking mind can never grasp? And what exactly is sleep? A biological reset, or a cosmic doorway? Here's the paradox. You spend a third of your life in a state you can't remember, a condition where your identity, thoughts, and self-perception collapse into black. You trust your body to breathe while you're not there. You trust the world to remain while you're absent, but you never question what disappears when you do. And if you can disappear, really disappear, each night without dying, then who are you when you're awake? A puppet animated by temporary awareness, or something deeper, stranger? What if your so-called self is not a constant flame, but a flickering illusion, snuffed out and reignited in cycles you don't control? This isn't just a biological curiosity, it's a crack in the mirror of your existence. And once you peer through it, nothing looks the same. Because to understand where your consciousness goes, when you sleep, you must first understand what it really is. Let's go deeper. You were never taught to fear sleep. You were only told it was necessary, restorative, natural. But beneath the soft lullabies and clinical explanations lies a deeper terror. No one warned you about Hong. Sleep is the only state you willingly enter, where your very existence vanishes, and you call it peace. Yet we are not at peace, because buried under our collective consciousness is a question too heavy to face yet. If you can vanish so easily, what proves you were ever truly here at all? Philosophers have circled this riddle for centuries, orbiting its gravity without daring to land. Carl Jung saw the unconscious as a vast, mythic underworld, a repository of the self we pretend doesn't exist. To Jung, sleep was not escape, it was confrontation, a descent into archetypes and shadow selves, a nightly reckoning with everything we repress. Not absence, but overwhelming presence, so raw and unfiltered, our waking minds are forced to forget it. Nietzsche whispered of eternal recurrence, where you live your life over and over, endlessly. What if that cycle doesn't begin at birth and end at death, but restarts every morning when you awaken, oblivious to the forgotten, lives you lived in dreams you can't recall? Schopenhauer believed consciousness was a curse, a flame cursed to flicker within the cold indifference of the void. He likened the will to a blind, tormented force that compels us to live despite the agony of knowing we will one day vanish. And maybe this is the cruelest twisting each night. We do vanish, and no one notices. Society reinforces this silence. In a world obsessed with productivity, consciousness is reduced to utility. Sleep is merely fuel. Dreams are dismissed as noise. The terrifying idea that we die a little every night is suppressed beneath mattress commercials and sleep hygiene checklists. But it haunts us anyway. In our anxiety before bed, our jolts awake from falling dreams, our midnight dread that we might not wake up. And in that dread lies something deeper, not fear of death, but fear of non-being, the existential vacuum Viktor Frankl warned us about. Not the end of life, but the end of meaning. We cling to identity, thought, memory, anything to prove we are real. Yet for 8 hours, none of that matters. The ego dissolves, the mind collapses, you slip away. And when you return, what are you returning from? This is the hidden problem. We treat sleep as routine, but it's a nightly confrontation with the limits of self, a forced surrender, a ritualized vanishing act that calls into question everything you believe about continuity, identity, and control. And still, you close your eyes, you surrender every single night. But what happens to you in the in-between? Let's look at what that surrender costs. The surrender seems harmless, routine. You slip under the surface, wake up, drink your coffee, go to work. Nothing appears broken. But that's the illusion, because while you sleep, something ancient, silent, and unsettling takes place. Not just in your brain, but in your being. You don't remember most of it. 90% of your dreams vanish within minutes. Whole emotional landscapes erased. Stories stranger than fiction, gone. You chalk it up to neurochemistry. The hippocampus doesn't consolidate dreams into memory. They say, REM cycles are fragmented. They say, but ask yourself, why? Why does the architecture of your mind discard this nightly experience so casually? What if it's not forgetfulness, but censorship, a defense mechanism to keep you sane? Rebellion begins. Because if you did remember where your consciousness wandered, maybe you couldn't function. Maybe you'd wake up and feel the unbearable dissonance between your daytime identity and your nocturnal one. The civilized self vs. the raw self, Jung's shadow. The id, the suppressed instincts, the unresolved traumas, the parts of you that don't speak in words. The psychologist Ernest Becker, in The Denial of Death, argued that much of human culture is a distraction from the unbearable truth of mortality. But what if the greater denial isn't of death, but of these small, nightly annihilations, the quiet dissolutions of self that we choose not to think about because they destabilize the story we tell, that we are continuous, stable, sovereign. In truth, you are stitched together by memory and illusion, and sleep exposes the seams. Neurologically, this shows up as fragmentation. Your brain enters a dissociated state. Consciousness is no longer singular, but scattered. The default mode network, responsible for your sense of self, goes dark. Lucid dreamers sometimes report a split awareness, a dreamer watching the dream, while the dream self acts inside it. Two use, neither fully real. Culturally, we reflect this fragmentation in our language. I had a strange dream last night. I had, as if dreams are possessions, not experiences. As if the you that lived them isn't you at all. And so we wake up diminished. The person who fell asleep is not quite the person who wakes up, but we patch over the gap with to-do lists and phone notifications. We do not question the subtle discontinuity, but this fracture accumulates. Each morning, you rise slightly estranged from yourself, haunted by shadows you can't name. These are not just forgotten dreams. They are forgotten selves, and they want to be remembered, because the cost of this nightly vanishing act isn't just lost time. It's the erosion of a deeper truth, the understanding of what you really are beneath the waking mask begins. But what if you could remember? What if you didn't have to vanish each night, helplessly? What if you could fight back? You don't have to be a passive passenger on the nightly train to nowhere. You can resist, not with force, but with awareness. Because rebellion begins the moment you stop accepting the vanishing of yourself as natural and start questioning the architecture of your reality. What if the key isn't to prevent the dissolution of consciousness, but to enter it willingly, to stand at the edge of the abyss, look into the darkness, and walk into it with your eyes wide open? This is the art of lucid dreaming, but it's more than a novelty. It is psychological warfare against the machinery of forgetting. In a lucid dream, you know you're dreaming. You regain agency. You remember who you are. And in that moment, the veil lifts. You're no longer the pawn of sleep. You are the explorer of it. Ancient cultures knew this. The Tibetan Buddhists practiced dream yoga, not as a mystical game, but as a path to enlightenment. They believed that sleep was training for death. If you could remain aware through the dissolving of the self in sleep, you could remain aware through the dissolving of the body in death. Awareness, they taught, is the only thing that truly endures. But the modern world anesthetizes you. Your routines are designed to dull your perception, to make unconsciousness comfortable, familiar. Screens lull you into passivity, the blue glow, the infinite scroll, the bedtime numbing. You don't drift into sleep, you are dragged into it. Breaking free begins with intention. Set it like a blade before sleeping tonight. I will remember. Journal your dreams. Meditate before bed. Question reality while awake. Ask yourself randomly, am I dreaming? This habit plants seeds in your unconscious. Eventually, you'll ask the same question in a dream and wake up inside it. And in that moment, something ancient stirs. Rebellion begins. You begin to dismantle the false division between the waking world and the sleeping one. You see both for what they are, in flickering films projected onto the same screen, your awareness. Sartre once said, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." If that's true, then sleep is your final frontier of self-authorship. What if you use those 8 hours not to disappear, but to evolve, to integrate the shadows, to explore the forgotten corridors of the mind, to meet the parts of yourself that only come out in darkness? You don't have to be whole only during the day. You don't have to let sleep be your erasure. Rebellion means remembering. It means waking up inside the illusion and refusing to forget again. And when you dog, when you finally learn to stay conscious in unconsciousness, you might discover a truth that was hiding all along. A truth that changes everything. You were never asleep, not in the way you thought. The final veil lifts, not with a burst of light, but with a whisper from the depths of your own being, saying you were the dreamer and the dreamed, the sleeper and the sleep. All along, you believed consciousness was a switch, on or off, present or gone. But the truth is far stranger. Consciousness is not something you possess. It is something you are, but only when you stop trying to hold it. What disappears during sleep is not yourself, but your illusion of control. You do not vanish. You shift, you become fluid, expansive, unbound by language, identity, memory. You dissolve into the field from which you came, the raw ocean of awareness from which the ego was carved like a brief ripple. The deepest truth: you are not your thoughts, not your name, not your memories. You are the space in which they arise. You are not the movie, nor the actor. You are the screen, untouched by the chaos it reflects. Every night, you return to that screen, and every morning, you forget. But now, maybe you remember. Arthur Schopenhauer believed the individual will is a condensation of a greater, universal force. When you sleep, that condensation evaporates. You do not become less real. You return to your original state. The boundary of you melts into the infinite, and you remember, if only for a moment, what it feels like to be whole. And when you wake, the self reassembles, but it is not the same self. It is a translation, a fragment of a larger, more mysterious awareness that your waking mind cannot grasp. Rebellion begins. like trying to drink the ocean with your hands. You were never meant to own your consciousness. You were meant to witness it. And here's the final paradox. You spend your waking life chasing continuity, control, permanence. Yet your trust nature reveals itself when all of that falls away. In sleep, you do not vanish. You return. Return to the stillness beneath the story. Return to the awareness that doesn't speak in words or wear a name. The real question was never, where does your consciousness go during sleep? The real question is, who is it that wakes up? Rebellion begins. Because the one who opens their eyes each morning is not the same as the one who closed them. Something has changed. Something has returned. And if you listen closely, in the quiet just before you fully wake, you can hear it. A silence so complete, it contains everything. Let that silence haunt you. Let it free you. Begins. Let it remind you that you are more than what you think. You are the witness behind the dream, the presence behind the disappearance, the awareness that survives even the void. And that is what you've always been.